in the Chargers game against the Texans. We're actually going to start with the Texans defense against the Chargers offense, really taking that theme where the Texans defensive line has been so good through the entire season. I really liked what they did in this game with their load front. So, you think back to D'Amico Ryans running this a lot in San Francisco, basically 3 defensive linemen to one side of the center, a linebacker kind of mugged up over the guard away from that, and then another defensive end outside. And you usually use it's a 5 down, or it looks like a 5 down front. In total, you use that for different stunts, different games. A lot of times you're playing cover 1, your man coverage looks behind it. I was impressed with the way that they would twist the kind of defensive end to that linebacker side, because we can think of times where Fred Warner is taking a long loop around to the opposite side. So just seeing the different games that they were using, I was really, really happy to see that from a plan perspective. They had a really, really strong day in the secondary, just thinking about Lassiter, thinking about Singletary, making a bunch of those plays. And even you have other guys that are stepping up, whether it's a Herbert overthrow here or there. So I was really, really happy what I saw from that Texans defense. And I mean, we spent all last year talking about how D'Amico Ryans he is one of those guys in terms of the playoff, the game planning, the one-off, this is a need-to-win game. Can you come up with it? And he absolutely can. So I was really, really impressed what I saw from him there.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said there, where we knew this Texans defense was pretty good coming into this game. They had ranked very highly in EPA per play allowed, success rate allowed. The talent is there because of the edge rushers and the corners, and they really put all of that together in this game where they held the Chargers, especially after the beginning of the game, to almost nothing on offense. And the Chargers couldn't really get anything going to any receiver except Ladd McConkey. And a lot of that was because of the Texans defensive line. They were able to pressure Justin Herbert on 52% of his dropbacks in this game. And when Herbert was pressured, he did not perform well, in those types of situations. He was taking a lot of hits in the pocket. So I think, his body wasn't feeling too good at the end of the game. And he just has too much trust in a lot of his pass catchers outside of Ladd McConkey, where he's throwing to Quentin Johnston and to other pass catchers in different situations, and they're just not able to come up for him. And so you ended up having this situation where Ladd McConkey had 81% of the Chargers' total passing yards in this game. He had a positive 8.3 total EPA when targeted, while all the other pass catchers basically had negative 20 total EPA when targeted. So just a combination of the Texans defense getting a lot of pressure on Herbert not being able to perform under pressure well, and then none of the pass catchers outside of McConkey being able to step up and help him, provided this strong defensive performance for Houston.
Overall, just a tough day from the Chargers offense. Obviously, we get some awesome splash plays, like the Ladd McConkey really long touchdown. That was so cool. That was so sweet just to see Herbert fit that throw in there. And look, he has that in him. He's always going to have that in him. Some of those throws that no one else can make. In this game, of course, there were a bunch of plays that he would have loved to have back. I do think that pass rush, a bunch of times you see his arm get hit, or you see him get rushed off his spot where you don't get a stable base. Now that ball's going to sail a little bit. So you saw that causing problems. I do think for the Chargers overall, I mean, it feels like they are, to me at least, they did overachieve this year. I'm sure in their building they would have felt they could have gone even further into the playoffs, but I think it's a positive start for that overall rebuild where you're making the playoffs in your first year. You're feeling like a strong team. I want to see the offense, continue to expand in different ways. Obviously, some of that is going to happen with bringing in different players, whether it's another receiver, whether it's another tight end, and I'm sure they'll continue to build up front, because you do need to be able to take the next step as a Chargers offense overall. So I wonder what's going to happen in terms of offseason conversations there. And then, I mean, this is a theme that I think we're going to talk about in a bunch of these games, particularly in the Commanders game, which I'm so excited to talk about this aspect of it. But you get a bunch of those early, we're going to kick a field goal on 4th and 2s where, look, I lean aggressive and I'm more comfortable being like wrong against the books or in terms of, or even like wrong against the numbers, like in the aggressive lean. It's super easy for me to say that from the perspective of I do not have to answer to literally anyone in terms of that specific thing, because I'm not making the decision. But I think you see it pay off in some of those other games. Hey, let's move on to the Texans offense against the Chargers defense here, where we had a bunch of situations for Houston where it was run, pass. And in the 3rd and long situation, the running game's not able to get going early on. And then you have situations where it's just tough on Stroud. But then as the game kept going a little bit, you see Stroud taking off, which I love that, because if you're playing against a team that is playing the kind of match coverage where the Chargers, like your linebackers are turning to receivers to match it, it's not really kind of matching with vision on the quarterback. Obviously, those guys are seeing the quarterback, but you can really see people turn away a little bit. That opens up our opportunities for the quarterback to take off. So I really like seeing that. Once you get those in breakers, you get Nico Collins, who, look, we talked about him early this season as someone who has the ability to be the best receiver in a league of amazing receivers. And I really, really feel he still has that ability. So I was happy to see him produce a lot in this game. What do you have for that Texans offense against the Chargers defense?
Definitely want to start with Nico Collins and the connection that he has with CJ Stroud, because that was the main reason why the Texans offense was able to score in this game, was because of the just chemistry that these two have with each other, where the Texans had 11 third down dropbacks in this game, and they only had 4 successful plays on those. Three of those 4 successful plays were because of Nico Collins, and the other one was a target to Xavier Hutchinson. But Nico Collins was able to not only get first downs on these late down plays, but also generate explosives off of that. And that's really what carried the Texans offense in this game, and made it a big part of their success, because they weren't able to do much on early downs in this game. It really was because of the late down performance from Nico Collins that they were able to convert the sticks and score points. And then also CJ Stroud scrambling helped out in a big way in this game, where he had 42 yards generated on scrambles against the Chargers. He usually averages 17 scramble yards per game. So this was a huge step up from what his normal production is. And we usually see some quarterbacks turn up the dial a little bit on how much they're willing to scramble in the playoffs, just because it might be your last game of the season. So you want to put your body out there. But for Stroud to recognize the situations to scramble, and scramble in high leverage spots, like right before halftime when he put them in field goal range, the big scramble on 3rd and 10 that he had towards the end of the game, like those were really key for the Texans offense to really just put up points in this game.
And I will say this was my it feels right being wrong, saying like, hey, why are we all just giving up on the Texans here? I'm glad you mentioned Stroud scrambling there, and you could say that maybe that's something you wanted to see a little bit more from Herbert in this game. Though again, Houston's defensive line really did a good job, and I think in some of their movements they were able to close down some of those scrambling lanes. Feel like Stroud said, hey, like it's me and Nico out here. Like I'm taking this into my own hands. We're gonna do this our way. So I really like that. And look, for the Texans overall, get 2 years in a row, winning the division, winning in the first round, being the 4th best team in the AFC is like, that's just something to be really proud of, I think. Obviously, again, easy for me to say. I'm not in that building. They obviously have higher aspirations. But when you look at a conference with the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, and you're that next team, you're playing in a game that you're going to have a chance to go to a conference championship game. Like, I think I'm not giving up on CJ Stroud, but I think some people this year, I think they did, just when you see some of the ways that he's played. And again, he has had games this season that have been rough, that have really been in situations where it felt like, man, like that does not look like the same quarterback that he did in his rookie year. But when he is, I think, comfortable in the pocket, when he does have an offensive line that is blocking for him well, he can just do so much from a game to game perspective that is a headache for defenses. So again, I feel like I'm rooting for everyone, Tej. I want to see the Texans continue to grow. I want them to be super competitive against the Chiefs. We'll preview obviously every matchup on our Thursday show. I do think the defensive line could, generate some fun where against the Chiefs offensive line that is, of course, obviously very good.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. Yeah, it should be definitely an interesting matchup. Obviously, the Chiefs have the edge in so many spots, but you just kind of need a nuclear Stroud type game, and something that I thought Slowick did like a good job of in this game was using the pass to set up the run. Where in the first half of this game, the Texans had a plus 11% pass rate over expected, so they were passing a lot because they couldn't get much going on the ground game. But in the fourth quarter, they had a negative 6.4% pass rate over expected. So they were really able to lean into Mixon, especially to close out that game. And he was getting a lot of successful rushes because of how much passing they did earlier in the game. So I wonder if that's something that they look to kind of do against Kansas City. But we'll definitely talk about that in more detail. And another small thing to mention about the Texans in this game was just they dominated the special teams aspect of this game, where the Chargers ended up losing 18.8% of win probability on any special teams play that they were listed as like the offensive team. So that includes like kickoffs, and then also obviously the 2-point conversion that the Texans ended up, or sorry, the extra point that was blocked that ended up counting as 2 points for the Texans, which was a very cool play.
I love the like gunner protector, like you're blitzing off the end. You have that run up. Obviously, we think back to the Patriots had the blocked field goal from it. I think it was maybe that was 2 years ago at this point, but yeah, for them to do that in that perspective was really really smart. And I love when you see playoff teams doing that. Tage, there was one play I wanted to talk about. So there was the interception that or non-interception that Derwin James had, where basically it's interception. Derwin James, I mean, is touchdown as well, but they obviously they let it go just to be safe. It ends up going, and then there ends up being a penalty on the Texans after that play. Upon review, that play is ruled incomplete. Now, I know there's like a specific rule based on like, oh, sometimes when it's a dead ball versus not dead ball, all that stuff. I feel like, if we're saying that that part of the play never happened, I feel like we can agree, like, hey, let's just remove that penalty. Now, I'm not saying, hey, just go buck wild if you're a player and really create some havoc here. But I feel like, in that specific thing, like that situation never would have occurred if we got the call right the first time. Maybe a part of me just thinks you let that go at the end.
I actually agree with you there. Yeah, we don't want it to become the purge where like everything is just available to anyone to do on the field. But I do think that yeah, it should be conditional on that aspect of the play actually happening. Because like yeah, I mean, he got the personal foul right after the play happened, and it was just like a situation where like that wouldn't have happened if the interception didn't happen. So kind of gotta retrace your steps there.